I'm afraid there's no skit this week. I didn't really feel like making light of anything in this episode considering what we're about to cover. This was not a particularly strong episode on the animation front, and we'll go over that shortly, but all I've seen over the past 20 or so hours has reminded me that much of the internet is still entirely incapable of talking like animation, like reasonable people. In between spam, pausing and zooming in, claims that this was episode 5 tier, and calling for animators to be fired. This is such disgusting and embarrassing behaviour, and it's not even close to reality. If this is you, stop. You sound ridiculous. I made a video about these types of posts not that long ago. It is linked in the description. Again, if this is you and you've somehow made your way to this video, please watch it and reconsider how you go about things in the future. On paper, this episode sounds like the kind of thing that becomes memorable for all the right reasons. Not only does it contain a transformation for a main character, but you've got animators like Futoshi Higashide, Chu-Young-seo, Kenji MIUMA, and Naoki Tate on board, not to mention supervision from Osamu Ishikawa and Hiroyuki Itai, two animators known for their very polished character art. Unfortunately, in spite of those facts, this episode is a pretty big mess. It's rough around the edges, and all of these talented animators aren't producing work that's even close to 10% of the abilities they've demonstrated in the past. That's incredibly unfortunate, and I'm really curious as to why. I suspect that the Christmas and New Year's break played a significant part of this. It's not the first time a holiday has caused an episode to nearly fall apart. Some of you may remember episode 90 came shortly after Golden Week in Japan, which resulted in only about 3 people working on the episode at one point, with the likes of Chu-Young-seo having to pick up the slack by taking on hundreds of cuts alone. In regards to this episode, Chu mentioned that he began working on this immediately after he was done with episode 122. From talking to Takahashi, we know that 122's key animation phase was finished a few weeks prior to the episode airing, so if that's the case, then this episode didn't have masses of time. It's hard to say for sure since Chu's contributions were only small and therefore unnecessarily representative, but it does seem to reflect reality. I think Naoki Tate's presence here speaks volumes about that. He's last credited on the episode, his scene is spectacularly short and rough, and its placement among the other cuts feels really strange. It's almost as though he was asked to come in and help get the episode done on time. Add to the fact that none of these top animators produced anything noteworthy, and I think it's pretty clear something wasn't right here. Keeping that in mind, let's take a look at who did what and how things turned out, because in spite of these issues, this episode isn't quite as catastrophic as it's being made out to be. It's mostly just subpar with a few sprinkles of quality seeping out of the cracks. Starting with the first half, this is supervised by Hiroyuki Itai. He's someone whose corrections when he was first promoted divided a lot of fans. Some people weren't keen on his very round noses, sharp eyes and slim necks, and that's totally understandable. Over his past few appearances, however, he's shed a lot of these traits and has become someone to really rely on as far as sticking to the character sheets go. While not every correction is perfect, he's done a pretty good job of raising the bar on some of the art in this half. That's a very good thing because YUKIHIRO KITANO is the top credited key animator on this episode, and the vast majority of his contributions are in this first half. Frieza vs Dispo and 17 and Gohan's initial section versus Toppo all appears to be Kitano's work. Compared to his usual output, it's not the worst thing in the world. Its biggest offense is that it's incredibly limited, but that's a running theme for just about everyone in this episode. The corrected character art prevents things from melting, and I have to say, in spite of every aspect of Kitano's work that I really dislike, I'd be lying if I said I didn't like the way he draws smoke. It doesn't make his scenes any good on the whole, but considering what we often see from him, it's an improvement at least. I think what bothered me the most about these scenes is how jarring it is to swap between Ide's corrections and Itai's, along with the original key animators. The supervisors are mostly fine on their own, but I feel like they clash pretty heavily. Itai's got a very soft style, while Ide's the very definition of manliness. When you start swapping between those and the other styles between every single cut, I think that type of of stylistic whiplash plays a big part in pulling people out of the episode. It's one of those details that speaks volumes about the time constraints here. The half wraps up with a scene from KENJI MIUMA as Goku and Jiren battle it out on the fallen rubble. There's a decent bit of movement here, I quite like the little rotation Jiren does, and of course MIUMA's effects are forever fantastic. It's a shame it's such a short scene, it's just another example to add to the pile of great animators not being able to deliver this week. Heading into the second half, Ishikawa takes over supervising and yikes. I'm not really sure what happened, but a lot of his corrections are really rough or straight up not found at all, instead leaving Takeo Ide to pick up the pieces. The most striking example is in Higashide's scene, but we'll touch on that later. First, I want to talk about Naoki Tate's contribution. It's the most competent bit of animation in this episode, but it's also his roughest output on the show in well over a year. The movement is as strong as ever and his close-ups are well polished, but the actual work from key to key is remarkably rough. You can see instances where Takeo Ide's tidy things up a bit, but even his corrections aren't particularly great. Next up we have Chi Young-se's input. He said he drew about 25 cuts, but unlike his effects work in 122, it didn't really have much motion. In his words, I just made a bit of money. He animated the scene where Goku is getting assaulted by Jiren just before Vegeta steps in, and the whole power-up scene begins. Like he admitted, there's no animation here, so I don't have much to comment on, I only mention it for the sake of identifying it. The transformation itself is actually a total mystery to me. It's very, very strange. It's kind of on model, but it's also kind of not. Both Vegeta and Goku are exceptionally broad-shouldered, and the actual screams themselves are quite rough-looking, but then the close-ups look good. I don't really know. It's the same issue I mentioned earlier about scenes wildly varying in quality from shot to shot. As they launch an assault at Jiren, Higashide takes over animating. As I alluded to earlier, it's very heavily corrected by Ide, but just so rough. Much like Tate's scene, the movement itself isn't too bad, it's just very limited, but the polish is not there at all. It's a real shame because Higashide is usually very good at working under intense time pressures, so for him not to deliver up to his usual standards is a real shame. As you can hear though, the criticisms directed at this episode are pretty much identical from scene to scene. Everything's just varying from middle of the road to subpar, and it's only made worse when you're aware of the true capabilities of these animators. The absolute best part of this episode, and this only makes it sting more, is the direction and storyboard from Masanori Sato. In my upcoming staff video, I mentioned that he's a bit of an inconsistent director, so I wasn't expecting much from him here. Yet much like Imamura's work last week, I'm left really surprised at just how strong things turned out. Sato's board is fantastic. He put a great emphasis on leading the viewer from fight to fight seamlessly, and I love the way Goku and Jiren on the beam was framed. The music choices were all on point, and the oomph that Vegeta's scene required was absolutely there. He did a stellar job. It's such a shame it was mostly wasted on a very rushed episode like this. I'm hoping so much that this is just an unfortunate one-off brought on because of the holidays. It's hardly the worst episode ever, but considering its content and its place in this arc, it really needed to be better. I think as a complete episode, it did its job of being entertaining, and I think that's ultimately what's most important to a lot of people. But as someone who cares very deeply about the show's production and its visuals, these types of situations are just never fun to deal with. They're especially not fun as someone who has to talk about these things each week and try and explain that Toei didn't suddenly stop caring or whatever crazy nonsense fans come up with. Hopefully next week's a lot better. On paper, it doesn't have the best of lineups, so I'm hardly expecting a top tier episode as far as movement goes, but at the very least, I'll be looking for that level of polish that's been sorely missed this week. I like my episodes to look finished at the bare minimum. But that's about all I have to say for now. Again, I hate being negative, and I didn't actually dislike this episode as a full package, but these videos are about breaking down the visuals, and I'm afraid they just weren't up to snuff. I hope you enjoyed this coverage in spite of that. Be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know how you felt about things this week. Rate the video and all that good fun stuff that I always ask you to do, and I will see you next time.